Hello everyone. So today I want to go through a focused topic on motor units and graded contraction. This topic topics comes from chapter 9 and focuses on slides 37 to 42. I moved a couple things around in here just so it kind of makes sense as far as classification for you all. So we've talked about motor units in class, but I just wanted to make sure that this was really clear as far as what they do. So our motor unit, it has to do with a motor neuron. So, coming off of your brain, extending down the spinal cord and going to your muscle. And then that motor neuron is making a connection to muscle fibers. And this can range between 4 or hundreds of muscle fibers, depending on what the muscle is, what it's supposed to be doing. So we know that we have larger muscles that are going to have motor units with lots of muscle fibers, whereas smaller muscles that are going to have more delicate movements will contain motor units with fewer fibers. So what does this all really mean? So I want you to picture a muscle here. We'll draw some striations in here. It means that we can control motor units, or control a muscle rather, by using multiple motor units. So this is I won't write the whole thing, motor unit 1. And then I will have another motor unit coming from over here, branching motor unit 2. And I might even have another one. Let's say this is motor unit 3. And all of these are grouping certain muscle fibers together. So for instance, if you cut through this muscle fiber and you were looking at each of these fascicles, okay, you would see that a nerve fiber is going to each of them. So this belongs all to muscle unit number 3. And we would have some other muscles interspersed in here, right? Because we got to make this a whole muscle. So this would be, whoops, I drew this kind of odd. Muscle unit 1. I'm going to actually extend this back to show you something too. And then lastly, we had muscle unit 2 that we didn't draw in. So you can kind of see muscle unit 2 kind of fills in the rest of the muscle. So we see that there is there's full control of these muscles here. Okay, so the reason I kind of drew these tails back is because what I want you to understand is all of those nerves that we're learning in chapter 10. Let's see, let's just use black. All those nerves you're learning from chapter 10, like for instance, let's not use that one. For instance, gracilis is innervated by the obturator nerve, or your semitendinosus is innervated by the sciatic nerve. So these motor units all live within those nerves. So here's one nerve. All of these axons moving on back are bundled together and will create, let's say, this is my radial nerve. And we know radial nerve will supply all of the posterior arm and forearm. So let's say this is one of the heads of the triceps, and what motor units are going to help us do is make sure that this muscle doesn't fatigue, or we can stimulate all of these motor units and get this muscle to completely contract all at once for, let's say, a power weightlifting exercise. Okay. All right. So next we're going to move into stimulus strength and motor unit response. So a lot of people will get a little confused with this all or none law or principle. So all or none, it has to do with nerves and also muscles. So when we say all or none, referring to an action potential, let's say, it means as long as we hit this threshold, and remember that's going to be really discussing voltage. So let's say our threshold stimulus is at negative 55 millivolts, and down here is where we're normally at, which would be like negative 70 millivolts. This is our resting membrane potential, right? And we get a stimulus, and sometimes that stimulus is not strong enough to reach our threshold, and so we get none. We don't get a response. We don't get an action potential. So this is called a sub-threshold stimulus, and I put two slides kind of together here so this makes a little bit more sense. So our sub-threshold stimulus, let's take a look at all of that. No action potential, no contraction. So we see here, didn't reach threshold. Here, there are no motor units that are excited, so no fibers really working there, and no tension created here. And basically, we're just left down here, no tension again. When we get to our threshold stimulus, okay, we get our action potential, and it's going to send that action potential along the sarcolemma of the muscle and cause contraction to take place. So that would be like number 3. I forgot to circle number 2 for our threshold stimulus there too. So we see that now we've got a motor unit fired. So at our threshold stimulus, that doesn't mean we're getting everything here, all of our muscle fibers. It means that we have at least one motor unit that has contracted muscle fibers. And so we see some strength in here now. We see tension building. And here's our one motor unit response down in here. Okay, let's move on to our next group. So we are getting our action potentials once we hit threshold, right? So how do we determine strength? How do we get a contraction to be stronger? We have to activate more motor units, right? All of these guys. We have to activate the motor units to get more muscle contraction. So we go through something called multiple motor unit summation. And I forgot to kind of touch on something in the previous slide. So I left this blank spot here too, because I want to kind of have this make sense for you. So as far as motor units. So if this is my force of the muscle contracting, and this is time, and we drew out those motor units before, but they disappeared. So anyway, if we use, let's say, motor unit, I don't remember what pink was, motor unit 3 maybe? If you use motor unit 3, we generate this type of force. If we generate or get another motor unit to contract, we get motor unit 2. Maybe it's controlling more muscle fibers there with that motor unit. But if we use both of these in conjunction, let me use a color we didn't use here. We'll use gray. Okay, we are going to be able to maximize force here. So we've activated motor unit 2 here and motor unit 3 together. So we get more force within the muscle. Okay, so let's go back here. So when we get to our multiple motor unit summation, that's kind of what's going on. We're recruiting more motor units in order to get greater strength, greater tension or force within the muscle. Okay, so let's look at these 3 different types. We have our submaximal stimuli. Okay, submaximal stimuli. And basically we are just adding more and more motor units here. So as we recruit more motor units, we get more tension built up within the muscle. Now it isn't until we reach our maximal stimulus that we get that maximal tension. we cannot recruit any more motor units. This means all of our motor units are working. Those muscle fibers are all stimulated and contracting. Whereas our supramaximal stimulus, even though we are getting more stimuli to pick up and use more motor units, we only have the motor units that we're going to have. We can't magically create more motor units. And so we keep this peak tension within our muscle here for our supramaximal stimuli. Okay. All right. So our strength within our muscle can be achieved in two different ways, and that's through summation and recruitment. And what we call this strength of contraction is a graded contraction, meaning it's ranging from weak to strong contraction, and it really just depends on the stimulus. If we get enough frequency of our action potentials, that means that we are going to want to recruit more motor units to get an increase in strength of the muscle. So compare this to lifting light loads to lifting heavier loads. So it's when you go to, I don't know, you find a little bunny. I'm remembering the rabies presentation in micro. You find that cute little bunny and you want to pet it, let's say, right? So you want to use more of weak stimuli so that you don't crush that bunny by recruiting more motor units and having more tension building within your muscle and creating a strong contraction within your muscle, if that makes sense. So let's talk more about the difference between summation and recruitment. What does that really mean? So with our summation, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more on the next slide, but summation is going to include, I want you to really understand what terms belong under which thing. So we're going to talk about trebay in a moment. And what this really is, well, actually, sorry, before we talk about trebay, let's talk about what summation is. So summation is going to be when we increase the force of contraction of muscle fibers. I'm going to put F for force of contraction of muscle fibers. So what that means is, remember your sarcomeres that kind of repeat over and over again, and how when they contract, they are going to shorten. So we are increasing this force, so it kind of means that they're just going to become even more shortened, okay? And we can increase this when our APs, action potentials, are arriving more frequently here. So an example of this is trebay. And trebay is going to be when we get rapid stimulation so that we get a greater force as time goes on. And it's kind of working off of the last contraction. If this doesn't make sense yet, don't worry, we're going to talk about it again soon. Now, when we talk about recruitment, this is going to be more of increasing the number of muscle fibers contracting. Sorry, my pen is not working well again. Whoops, no O. Contracting. Okay. And so the term that we really want to put under recruitment is going to be multiple, summation, multiple motor unit summation. Okay, that is what we just talked about, right? That submaximal stimulus, maximal stimulus, all of that has to do with this multiple motor unit summation, okay? So what we're doing there is just increasing our stimulus strength and in turn increase our number of contracting motor units. This is really getting worse, isn't it? Okay, so that links back to our recruitment. We're recruiting more motor units so that we can increase the strength. Okay. One more term I want to add here under summation is going to be tetanus. Whoops. Okay. More on this in the following slides too. So let's talk about trebay first. This is going to be a graded response. So we have our muscle rested, okay, it's relaxed for a long period of time. And then we have low, do I have this on here? I don't. So you're going to have low, there we go. Where was I going? Low frequency stimulation. And so what this results in, if we have this low frequency stimulation, it kind of allows for the next one, the next stimulation that we have. So this is stimulation 1, let's say, or muscle twitch 1, muscle twitch 2, 3rd, 4th, and so on, right? So it's allowing the next contraction to become even stronger. So after a couple contractions, we see that we reach this maximal tension level here. We can't, whoop, where did my screen go? Oh, it got rid of all my writing. Anyway, we can't go any higher than this as far as tension. So why is that? Why are all these contractions equal, and how are we able to increase this after we get relaxation? It's because we have our calcium that would be around our myofibrils here, and within the first few contractions here, the calcium in our sarcoplasm, so surrounding the actin and the myosin, they are going to stick around, and that's why we are more efficient when we contract the next time. Instead of all the calcium going back to the sarcoplasmic reticulum, some of them hang around, and we can attach it more to troponin, move tropomyosin out of the way so we can reveal those active sites on our actin filament for the myosin heads to attach there. Okay. So another thing to keep in mind too here is that it's going to take muscle twice as long to relax than it is to contract. So our calcium moves out of the sarcoplasmic reticulum really quickly, but it takes a longer time, more of a slow movement of the calcium to move back in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That's why they're sticking around, and we can get these next contractions to be to create more tension, more strength within the muscle. Okay, so let's move into tetanus now. Again, this is another type of summation. So it says, as frequency of our action potentials are going to increase, the frequency of contraction increases. That makes sense, right? Action potentials is what is going to cause the muscle to contract in the first place. So what is tetanus? It's going to be a period where we have sustained contraction. So let's focus on this image down here real quick. See how this is sustained and we keep that tension in place? So if we have enough action potentials happening kind of back to back, then we get this complete tetanus. Here's our twitch. This kind of reminds us of our trebay a little bit, right? Except we're not seeing that building of the stronger tension building up. But anyway, we are seeing that we have some relaxation taking place within this muscle here. Whereas if we start seeing in frequency 2, we are more frequently adding action potentials. So instead of this muscle being able to completely relax here, it only partially relaxes. And then so we can kind of build upon that and gain more tension. And then over here, if we add frequency 3, that means we're increasing the frequency even more of our action potentials. And then we move up to even more tension building up on the muscle and partial relaxation. Again, not full relaxation down here, just partially. And then by frequency 4, by frequency 4, we are not allowing any relaxation to take place, and we get complete tetanus where we are able to sustain that contraction. Okay. Oh, and so we call this multiple wave summation. Okay, multiple wave summation. So last thing I want to do before we talk about tension is I kind of want to compare and contrast trebay and tetanus. So, and I'm just going to do this on this slide because I have room here. So we know that both of these are summation, types of summation. So with trebay, we have our stimulus is at its max level. Stimulus at max. So what that means is all of our motor units are activated, stimulated. Whereas our tetanus, our stimulus is just at threshold. And we're just using one motor unit with this. The other difference we're going to see is with trebay, we have low frequency of the action potentials. And with tetanus, we're going to have increased frequency of our action potentials. And last thing is we have, in trebay, we have increased sarcoplasmic calcium. And this is more of a comparison. We are also going to have increased sarcoplasmic calcium in our tetanus as well. Okay, to allow for that summation to take place. So that brings us to tension. So tension is produced by our contraction, the force exerted on the load or the object to be moved. If we want optimal tension or contraction, it'll occur when the sarcomere is at rest so that there's optimal overlap within the actin and myosin filament. So what this means is you want kind of a happy medium. If you are stretching your myosin and actin too far apart, so if my myosin would all be here, okay, and actin would be further out on the ends here, that is not going to give us our optimal contraction. Same thing if my actin, let's say we changed it, and we made actin really close here to the M line and really overlapping our myosin filaments, that's not going to allow us for optimal contraction either. So you kind of want a happy medium instead. So what this is going to be important for are athletes kind of being prepared for what they want their muscles to do, how they want them to be triggered. So your book, I think, gave you an example of a weightlifter and trying to do a power resistance exercise. And so they might be stretching their upper or lower limb muscles to kind of get their sarcomeres in the right position. You might add a little bit of a bend in the knee or a bend in the elbow in order to allow this to take place. So that is it for this focus topic. Let me know if you guys have any questions on this or any other topics so I can clarify that for you.